Morning, Mr. Ching.
Kealoha Pisciotta for Kealoha Pisciotta, Mauna, Nainaho, and Paul Nevis. Kale's not here today.
Okay, thank you.
Kakayakano E. Kalani Flores, representing the Flores case Ohana. And then after we do in appearances, I have a follow-up with one item prior.
Okay, good morning.
Thank you. Morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Dexter on behalf of Kahea.
Good morning, Mr. Kayama.
Good morning, Your Honor. Lincoln Oshida, representing Perpetuating Unique Educational Opportunities.
Thank you, good morning.
Aloha, Mehana Kihoe.
Aloha, Ms. Kihoy.
Mrs. Sleighholm is on her way. She's about 10 minutes away.
Okay,
She was stuck in traffic.
hers is the first witness. Okay,
Good morning, Judge Douglas Singh and Jeff Ono appearing for TMT International Observatory, LLC. Thank you.
good morning, Mr. Ng.
Good morning, Cindy Freitas, and Mr. Freitas is still ill right now.
Thank
He
you.
won't be attending.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else making an appearance? Deborah Ward is not present. CM Kanuha. CM Kanuha. Not present. Joseph Kamara. Joseph Kamara. Not present. Lanny Sinkin. Lanny Sinkin. Not present. Kalikalehua Kanaile. Kalikalehua Kanaile. Not present. Stephanie Tabata. Stephanie Tabata. Not present. Tiffany Kakalia. Tiffany Kakalia. Not present. Glenn Keela. Glenn Keela. Not present. Mr. Vicente is present. Good morning. Brandon Kealoha. Brandon Kealoha. Not present. Mrs. Holi, good morning. Mr. Professor Flores, you wanted to take something up before we began?
Thank you, Your Honor. E. Kalani Flores for the record. I'm just following up with the minute order 42 regarding granting the the request for subpoena for Sam Lemo.
Yes.
So I'm not sure of the process, and I did receive the minute order on Friday. So this weekend I typed up a proposed summons, and subpoena, I should say, and I have it for signature.
Yes.
But I have a couple of questions, I guess, in the process for this. So my understanding that we're trying to schedule Mr. Lemo for February 27th, which is Monday.
Yes.
But I'm looking at I guess the first question: does this does this subpoena have to be served in 3 business days before the hearing date?
What does the rule say? I cited to the rule, but I I don't have it off.
I thought it mentioned to something to that extent. And
Okay.
so that's my first question. Second question, can it be served via staff since this is internal? I mean, the Department of Land and Natural Resources and OCCL is part of this hearing. So is there a way to have it served via the staff or Deputy Attorney General? So I'm at a loss of how to proceed with this at the moment.
Well, typically the subpoenas have to be personally served.
Okay.
But if you just, during the recess, perhaps talk to Mr. Weinhoff and Mr. Kane. I was thinking that I was going to sign the subpoena yesterday, but I didn't have it. So
And-
I can sign it now, and we'll just figure it out. But you have to have the requisite payments beforehand.
And that was my other question, is how do I figure out the payments if the flights and other things haven't been booked yet?
Maybe that's something you can discuss with them.
Okay. And, okay, so, I mean, I tried to forward to someone yesterday to bring it here, but they weren't able to, their stuff, but I'm just going to state that I've been put at a disadvantage because of the time frame we're looking at. So unless if it has to be served in 3 days, and the question is, how do I get it served within 3 days of the hearing? Because today's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, maybe.
During the recess, why don't you talk to counsel, to Mr. Weinhoff, who is counsel for this tribunal, and he can perhaps talk to you about how that works.
Okay.
Okay?
Because I am prepared. I have a checkbook. I have the subpoenas and drafted up for signature, and I'm just waiting how to proceed on this matter.
Right. So maybe you can hand the subpoena to Mr. Weinhoff. He can look at it now.
Okay.
Then be prepared to talk to you on the recess, during the recess.
Okay.
If it's in good order, then I can sign it right now, and then it's just a matter of service. But
Okay.
if it's not in good order, then we have to fix it, and that might take a little longer. But we can work something out. Don't
Okay.
worry.
And so the only thing I left blank besides the date for signature and your signature was the date for his appearance.
His appearance is the 27th.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Your Honor.
Professor. Good morning, Mr. Kayama.
Your Honor, Ms. Sleightholm did ask me this morning via telephone that if I might present the scheduled witnesses today, Mr. Ho and Ms. Kaopua Goodyear, so to make the offer and to be the person doing the objecting, and I'm willing to help and do it that way, and I
Yeah,
just want to...
it's not unusual. You've done it for others, so it would be
Yes.
a part of our normal course.
Right, and since she's not here yet, I just want to let you know so that if your hearings officer is ready, we can proceed with the witnesses.
I am ready, but I want to take up one housekeeping matter first. Mr. Ng, did you have any objections, or?
Well, just a concern. So if he's going to present these witnesses for Ms. Sleighholm, which I don't have an objection to, then I'm assuming then that Kahea waves cross.
The way we did it the other day was Kahea gets a shot at cross, but Ms. Sleightholm does not get a shot at cross.
So who's defending her when he's cross-examining her? He just has a free shot. There's no one there to pose an objection.
I will.
Thank you.
I'm sure that's not going to give you a lot of confidence, but... All right, so, Mr. Ashita? Has Pueo concluded its case in chief?
We have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No further witnesses for Pueo. Mr. Kayama?
Thank you, Your Honor. The first witness we would be calling this morning is Mr. Nelson Ho,
And that's on behalf of,
on behalf of Ms. Leina'ala Sleightholm.
very good.
Thank you.
And the offer of proof?
Okay. Mr. Ho is a resident of Hawaii Island. He currently is employed for a council member here with Hawaii County. Mr. Ho has been involved in the telescopes on Mauna Kea, including the management, and has been involved as a member of the Sierra Club since 1995. He has also been asked by including UH officials to participate in the management and the policies of telescopes on the mountain. And Mr. Ho today will be testifying by both his written direct as well as his oral testimony on either directly or indirectly all 8 aspects of the criteria, 8 criteria, excuse me.
To the degree he's qualified.
To the degree he's qualified.
So I fully expect that there will be foundation laid if necessary, and otherwise it's his written direct testimony.
It's his written direct testimony, that is correct, Your Honor.
Okay.
And so he will also be, of course, testifying from his personal experiences and personal observations as well during his tenure as a member of the Sierra Club and his participation in the management policies concerning the telescopes.
Okay. Mr. Ng?
Well, Your Honor, I'm objecting to that offer of proof because his written direct testimony does not address the 8 criteria. Talks about his long personal history and involvement with telescopes and development and conservation districts. But he doesn't go into the criteria at all.
Mr. Kaya, let's hear from Mr. Sanderson first.
We join that objection. There's no discussion of the 8 criteria in Mr. Ho's written testimony.
Mr. Kayama?
Your Honor, while he may not mention specifically the 8 criteria in his written direct testimony, just a quick reading of it shows that he is discussing the criteria itself in the written direct testimony. So he doesn't necessarily have to say this is criteria 1 or this is criteria 8. He talks about the substantial and adverse impacts. He speaks to much of, and I'm sorry, but he does speak to much about each of the criteria in his written direct testimony. So I don't necessarily agree with Mr. Ng or Mr. Sanderson that just because it doesn't mention criteria 1 or criteria 8 that he's not speaking to it in his written direct testimony.
Okay, Ms. Pisciotta is right behind you, Mr. Ng. Let's take her first and then you.
Yes, aloha. I just wanted to mention that there's been numerous witnesses that their written direct does not directly speak to it because they are not necessarily, forming any opinions about that. But at the end, we are bringing them on to address the 8 criteria. In other words, someone who's talking about health is talking about criteria number 8. So their witnesses didn't specifically mention the 8 criteria either. So I think Mr. Nelson is able to actually speak about that. So I'm just saying, they've had lots of witnesses up here, and they don't necessarily say 8 criteria in their written direct, but they are speaking to the effects or to the nature of the 8 criteria. That's all.
Mr. Ng?
Mr. Ho barely mentions the TMT project at all in this case. He has a long history, talks about management, mismanagement of the mountain, refers to IFA, talks about political background of some of these decisions, talks about court cases, rarely mentions the TMT project at all. What I'm concerned about is that you accept this offer of proof, and then intervener after intervener comes up here and starts asking him about the 8 criteria. Well, that's not in his written direct testimony at all. Just opens the door.
I understand. We have had a problem, Mr. Kayama. I can understand why Mr. Ng is vehement in his challenge to the offer of proof.
Oh, Mr.
Yes.
As I watched the testimony being presented by the PUEO organization, time after time, the offer of proof had to do with the 8 and criteria number 8. Yet it was nowhere in the testimony as to that regard. And that was done in the previous day. And I saw no objection from any of the council members regarding that. And
Well, we have had an extraordinary expansion of the written direct testimony, and that's why I think the objections are noted now.
Right.
And it's been continuous, and I have attempted to remind people that the cross-examination is cross-examination. I reminded people a long, long time ago that the written direct testimony needs to be the direct testimony. So,
Right.
and what happens is when it's not, it puts us right here where we are.
Right. But I just saw the offer of proof offered by the council for the PUEO organization and their witnesses. Each time came up, had to do with criteria 8, and it was mentioned, yet there was no objections on that. I'm just making that note for the record, Your
All
Honor.
right? Good morning, Ms Sleighholm.
Leina'ala Sleightholm, sorry for me being late today.
No problem. So, Mr. Kayama, please wrap up the issue. It's a problem. It's been a problem for many, many weeks, and I've asked you about it also. And so,
And Your Honor, concerning that issue, I would just say I do know we've had that discussion, and I do know that I think our perceptions may have been a little bit different on that. I did believe in many of those cases that the questions that were asked actually were consistent.
well, I'm not very much into perceptions. I'm very much into what's on the record and articulated in words. And I have made it really clear numerous times that the written direct testimony needed to be the direct testimony. And cross-examination is based on the written direct testimony. And so what we've since experienced, and now we're almost at the end, so frankly, I'm not inclined to change that, but I am not happy. And so what it's going to go to, as I've said before, is it goes to weight.
Yes.
And therefore, if somebody's up here giving their opinion about Category 1 and they're not qualified to talk about Category 1, guess how much weight that's going to be given?
I understand.
Nothing. So we can't be, and that's a waste, right?
Yes. Okay.
So I understand the objection. I think I've been now very clear on the record exactly what my thinking is on how I'm going to have to deal with it.
I understand.
So if, we end up going into areas that are going to carry no weight at all, I don't think that's a smart thing to do.
Again, and I do believe that the testimony of Mr. Ho and then following up with Professor Goodyear-Kaopua Goodyear, will both be relevant material and will have some weight for Your Honor's consideration.
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
So, Mr. Kayama, I think this is an individual who may have given me some kind of papers early on, months ago. Is that
That
you?
is correct, Mr. Amano.
And you said you slapped them in front of me and said I'm being served.
That was at the request of Mr. Lanny Sinkin, who's a personal friend of mine.
Okay, so I just want to disclose that I don't know him,
Okay.
but I recognize him, and I don't remember even how many documents. My practice is it's given to me, I hand it to counsel. So I don't know what happened with it after that, but I believe it's this individual.
And I think he just confirmed that.
All right.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sir, would you please state your name into the microphone? State your
Yes,
name.
my name is Nelson Ho.
All right, sir. Would you raise your right hand for the oath? Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the matters before this tribunal shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I affirm.
Thank you. And Mr. Ho, we've been talking about your written direct testimony. Do you happen to have a copy in front of you?
Yes, I do.
And how many pages is the copy you have?
I apologize because it was not numbered, but it is 11 pages long, and the title is The Amended Contested Case Hearing, Testimony of Nelson Ho, Witness for Petitioner Leina'ala Sleightholm, December 26, 2016.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Ho, as to the statements within your written direct amended written direct testimony, are those your statements?
They are.
And as you sit here under oath, are you affirming that each of those statements is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, they are.
All right. And it's been our practice to allow the witnesses up to 10 minutes to summarize their direct testimony. And if you'd like to take that time, please do so.
Yes, I would. Thank you very much.
Before we proceed, Your Honor, could I have a quick point of clarification? The written direct testimony that we've been preparing for is 15 pages in length. I just numbered them, which is the amended written direct testimony dated December 26, 2016.
It should be 11. Maybe there are extra pages there?
They are not duplicative pages.
Oh. I can compare them with the copy that I have here.
Let's do that.
Or I can give you another
No.
set.
I'd like to compare your copy, if you don't mind, if you have an unmarked copy. Okay. Mr. Ng, you have a objection?
Yes, because the testimony that I had reviewed was filed in October. Now, I understand there was a late file, like Sunday night at 11 p.m., version of a new or amended statement. However, I didn't have that over the course of the weekend. And there have been, just a quick review of it, been substantial changes between the October submission and the submission that came in or was served on Sunday night, late Sunday night.
Yes, it does. I have another copy that is clean.
Yeah.
I gave it to Mrs. Ikeda. But they are, it should have been, as I recall, 11 pages.
Okay, so let's get Mr. Kayama involved, if you don't mind. We have two issues, apparently, and I am very concerned about the second issue, which is something was filed Sunday.
Yeah, this is the 11 pages. I don't have another one here. Oh, okay. I guess I do.
We're going to take a recess in place so that Mr. Kayama can compare the documents and also consult with Ms. Sleighholm about any submissions.
exact same testimony. It just may have been a difference in the formatting that accounts for the pages, but we went through all of the paragraphs, and the paragraphs all seem to line up.
So it's some kind of printing anomaly.
Some kind of printing anomaly. yes,
Okay.
Your Honor.
Now, I also now have in front of me the documents library, evidentiary hearing submittals, and it does show that the amended contested case hearing testimony of Nelson Ho was submitted on February 19th. Is that accurate?
I believe that's accurate, Your Honor, and I can have Ms. Sleighholm come up and speak to that if it's necessary. She did indicate to me, I did ask her on the break, that she received it on or about February 12th. Now,
But it's dated December.
and actually, I didn't ask Mr. Ho the reason for why he dated it December, but he actually just presented that testimony to her on or about February 12th. Now, Ms. Sleighholm's circumstances, I think, are well known to the hearings officer, but because of that, she was not able to file it until the 19th. Now, understanding those concerns, I do believe that it does provide the 48-hour notice. So
Don't even go there.
I'm just saying, I think.
Honestly, that's not fair.
Oh,
The reason is,
okay.
very early on in the hearing, there was a lot of hullabaloo about when things were submitted and how much time people had to prepare.
And I think Your Honor has been pretty open to allowing things to be amended even beyond that, or closer to the time of testimony. So I think Your Honor has been very patient in that regard. I'm just saying, I think under Ms. Sleighholm's circumstances, she did file it as soon as she was able to.
I'm not concerned about me. I'm concerned about people having enough time to prepare. That was the big issue. It took a long time. They had to review it way in advance. The 19th was a Sunday. When were people going to prepare for it? Today's the 22nd, Wednesday, and Monday was a holiday. So
I don't know how to address. I understand Your Honor's concerns, and I'm not sure what to offer Your Honor and the parties here, except to say that it doesn't amount to not calling Mr. Ho, but perhaps whether that allows for some kind of rescheduling of that might be the consideration I might ask the hearings officer to consider.
Mr. Ng, let's hear from you.
Well, Judge, my understanding is, and my notes show that this was filed on 11 p.m. Sunday night, so I didn't even see it until Monday sometime. So it comes as a surprise, number one. Number two, it's dated December 26th, so I don't know why the long delay. We shouldn't bear the burden of that delay with regard to his testimony. But my recommendation is we go with his original testimony, which is what I read and prepared for, and had no notice that this was coming so late in the day. So I'm opposed to him testifying based upon the amended testimony.
Alternatively, Mr. Ng, I think Mr. Kayama offers a suggestion that would have to be considered, and that is to reschedule the testimony of this witness to next week.
I'm opposed to that because we don't have very many days. We've already lost Mr. Freitas and Mr. Fujiyoshi for today. We're going to lose a whole day. It's all that expense, time. He's the primary witness for today. No offense to other witnesses, but he has a long history with telescope development on Mauna Kea.
So what I get is Mr. Ng is requesting that we disallow the amended document and instead consider the written document that was submitted in October.
And Your Honor, of course, I would entirely object to that. I think Mr. Ng's unwillingness to reschedule, I think is more disingenuous and speaks more to his unwillingness to allow Mr. O to testify about matters that he has either personal knowledge or experience in. Again, I think his concern about the timing of the hearings, to me, Your Honor, rings false when I think Mr. Ng, with his own witnesses at times, ran out of witnesses during the day. And
Mr. Kayama,
I'm just speaking. Mr. Ng raises that question about the timing of things. So I think because he raises the question of it, I think it obligates me to raise those issues as well. Again, I think his concerns.
I think if you go back over the record, you will see that there was only one day where there was we got out early.
And so what we're talking about today, Your Honor, is perhaps one witness that we're talking about rescheduling.
But inexcusable. On the day that we finished early, about a month or so ago, it just happened that there weren't as many cross-examiners that day, and so our anticipated amount of time was actually shorter. So there was nothing we could do to predict that.
But I think the alternative in limiting or restricting his testimony when he is a witness to this, I think, and not providing Ms. Sleighholm, her witnesses, an opportunity to address the issues, I think when you consider the balance of that, I think that balance has to be in favor of Ms. Sleighholm.
You tell me, right? We have a written direct testimony filed in October for which people have used that and prepared for today. There's now an amended contested case hearing testimony dated December 26th, apparently transmitted to Ms. Sleighholm on February 12th, and sent to the Department of Labor, or rather Land and Natural Resources, on the 19th. So, and uploaded by us during that time. So there's quite a bit of difference, and I understand why wasn't this submitted in December?
And Your Honor, I apologize, but again, in order for me to address those issues, Your Honor, I would ask for a little more time, another recess, so I can have some of those questions asked myself. So if Your Honor is expecting...
I'll take a recess in place, and you may confirm and then represent to us the explanations, because I'm going to make a decision one way or the other.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, regarding some of the concerns that have been raised and the facts concerning the differences in the testimony, Ms. Sleighholm actually knows more about those facts, and if I may let her address the hearings officer on those issues. I'm not as familiar with that, so if I may allow her to address it.
Leina'ala Sleightholm. Uncle Nelson had substantially finished his amended written direct at the end of December, but we weren't sure if we could submit it or not submit it, and then we started noticing other people submitting amended written directs, and so he originally sent me his amended on February 12th. So the delay from the 12th to the 19th was my fault. I was sick with a fever. My kids were sick, and so I submitted it for Michael, and I attached the other parties, and then I forgot the certificate of service, and so I re-emailed with the certificate of service, so there might be a difference in time, or it looks like I submitted twice because of that fact. But I would ask if we could delay Mr. Ho, if possible. But yeah, I take responsibility for the delay from the 12th until the 19th.
You're asking to delay his testimony
If we can.
to allow everybody else to have an appropriate time
Yes.
to review? Okay. Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Sleighholm. Mr. Ng?
You know, I'm not willing to delay, so I'm going to withdraw my request to strike the amended testimony, and I'll just go with it. But I know that had the situation been reversed and had that been testimony from one of my witnesses, you know, Judge, you would have had a stream of objections from everyone here. So I'm trying to go overboard. I know you want to give them flexibility because they're not attorneys, they're representing themselves, but you know, it's been unbalanced. They have been given enormous latitude in how they have presented their witnesses, filed their exhibits, and even filed their testimony.
All right, thank you.
May we proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Ho, you have up to 10 minutes to summarize your testimony as spelled out in your amended contested case hearing testimony of Nelson Ho, witness for petitioner Leina'ala Sleightholm, with a date of December 26, 2016. And I imagine that the date doesn't mean anything, right? Based on what I just heard.
Unfortunately, that date represents the death of a member in my family, so I stopped it there and attended to that. And then I heard Mrs. Sleighholm's problems, and I didn't pursue it with her until much later in the process.
Okay, I understand, but for our purposes, and I'm sorry about your family member, for our purposes, this document, that date, December 26, doesn't mean anything.
It was the date I substantially finished the rewrite.
Okay, but substantially finished a document doesn't mean anything, right?
Okay.
So it's really when you completed it, and it sounds like it was February.
Yes, I sent it to her then.
All right, so please go forward with your 10-minute summary.
Sure. Thank you very much. My name is Nelson Ho, and I'm very pleased to be here. I'm honored to be here presenting information to this contested case hearing about my experiences with what I call the land mismanagement of Mauna Kea, pretty much from the inception of the 1965 lease. And as an aside, I do believe that the proposed 30-meter telescope should be built. It should not be built on Mauna Kea. I go through, well, let me start at the beginning. I first visited the mountain in 1975. It was very much less developed. In fact, there were no structures there. I went to Lake Waiau, and we observed ceremony there. In 1979, I was invited to the opening of the NASA infrared telescope. I had just moved over from Honolulu, and was just really pleased to be up there. And at that time, I believe there was only one other structure there. In 1997, I was, because of my criticism of the way the mountain was being developed, I was invited by the university to attend the groundbreaking of the Smithsonian Institution. And I actually witnessed something at the luncheon afterwards that I felt was really disrespectful to the whole process, that the mountain was being rented out, and I can go into that detail later. I would say that there has been 50 years of unchecked ambition by the international astronomy industry that has unbalanced the proper management of the mountain, and actually has made a mockery of the 8 criteria that were used as conditions for development. I think it unjustly enriched the University of Hawaii, maybe not in dollars, but certainly in prestige, in the ability to get grant money and attract more telescopes, which would get a more complete and better graduate program in astronomy. And that has affected both the ability of the university and DLNR to properly manage the mountain, though the effects of having so much dependent on the continued development of the mountain really distorted the decision-making process. So I'm glad we're able to put on the record through all the various testimonies what should have been done and the corrections possible to redress the situation. I began my involvement with the policy issues in May of 1995 when Sierra Club members called me saying that there was debris, construction debris, blowing into the natural area reserve, blowing into the plateau area, which had shrines that were being impacted by rubbish. And so my first response was to contact then IFA Director Don Hall, and eventually, at first he just said, listen, that's just rubbish from the visitors who get out of their vehicles and the strong winds tear off their ball caps and take out their coffee cups. So I went up there after not visiting the summit for 4 years, and I was actually shocked by the amount of construction happening in 1995. And I noticed a lot of debris that included 50-gallon petroleum drums that were in gullies, probably blown there by the strong winds of the mountain. And actually went up there with Mr. Hall, and he agreed to clean up those areas and started to do so. I think eventually they took off truckloads of debris. And to prove that it was not the public that was creating this problem, I actually did a transect going out into the area of the shrines, just taking a straight line and a compass bearing, things that I had learned as a resource management technician working at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. And just go out on a straight line and you pick up every piece of debris that you could find. And I brought that back to the Tribune Herald to raise the issue of proper management of the mountain. And this was in 1995, and it turned into a front page article in the Tribune Herald. I think I had to join with Mililani Trask, who was from Kalahui, Hawaii at the time, and the two of us spoke at many DLNR board meetings to try to get some redress. The response at one of the meetings was to allow practically unfettered access by commercial vehicles. And so hence we now have the huge problem of having so many commercial vehicles up there every night doing tours and really changing the character of the mountain. Because of my public involvement, I was appointed by the University of Hawaii President Kenneth Mortimer to serve on his Mauna Kea Advisory Committee in from 1998 to 2000, where we put together the first master plan. The committee was led by UH professors Drs. Larry Kimura and Pilo Wilson, and eventually that committee declined to endorse a deeply flawed version of the master plan for observatory expansion. And the university consultants, Group 70 International, eventually completed the plan on their own and presented it to the Board of Regents. And at that time, there was a Board of Regent who threatened to resign over that plan. And I make the assertion that there has been institutional racism going on by the University of Hawaii. And I was not the first person to state that. This Board of Regent was. His name was Nainoa Thompson. And he got the plan substantially altered before the Board of Regents adopted it in 2000. I am alleging that that kind of institutional racism continues to this day, where the desires for continuing Mauna Kea as the premier astronomical observatory in the Northern Hemisphere takes precedence over the DLNR responsibilities to protect the natural and cultural resources. And that goes to the diminishment of the value of the 8 criteria when it comes to increasing the number of telescopes on the mountain. Let's see. From 2003 to 2011, Sierra Club officially was part of a legal hui that went through that brought a federal lawsuit to compel NASA to complete the first federal EIS conducted on Mauna Kea for any of the observatories. And that resulted in the language of, and I'm moving ahead, significant, adverse, and substantial impact. And I quote from the findings, the cumulative impact of the past, present, and reasonably foreseeable astronomy developments have resulted in significant, adverse, and substantial impacts to the cultural and natural resources of Mauna Kea. And I cited it in my testimony, and that came out in July 2013. The reason for the imbalance is that the desires of the university and the DLNR were underpinned and pushed forward by by political decisions made by political leaders, and I named them in my amended complaint. I merely referred to them in the original one, and that
You're talking about the amended testimony?
amended testimony. Thank you. That starts from Senator Dan Inouye, includes the various governors at that time, from John Burns through George Ariyoshi and on to Neil Abercrombie. And I point out that there was significant involvement by Larry Mihal, who was then the chair of the Department of Land and Natural Resources, and he actually got the criticisms quieted by the hunters and the environmentalists in the 70s, when he made it known that he wanted to see the telescope development continue at that early date. And to support that, I would point to, let's see, okay, let me go on to who were the early critics.
Mr. Ho, I'm
Yes.
sorry, but you're pretty much over with your 10 minutes.
Oh, my goodness.
So
Okay, I apologize.
If you'd like to take a minute to wrap up.
Yeah, I would just like to acknowledge the early critics of the mountain, which include Mrs. May Mull and her husband Bill Mull, who actually were part of the team that discovered the WECU bug. They brought a group of biologists up to the summit, where they were the first to look closely at the summit ecosystems and what was there at the summit, and discovered the WECU bug. So I'll let it rest at that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ho. Ms. Pisciotta?
Okay, aloha, Nelson. How are you?
I'm fine.
Okay. Let me ask you a quick question about Mr. Mihal. If you know, Mr. Mihal also, on the other side of the equation, also proposed that they cannot offer time on the telescopes in lieu of paying rent. So he was for paying rent, correct?
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I did not.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, so I want to ask you some questions about OMKM. Is it your understanding that OMKM is, or is it your testimony actually, that OMKM is in a conflict of interest, serving both as a quote unquote the proponent of development and the one who's supposed to be tasked with protecting the mountain?
Absolutely in conflict. I was on the committee that discussed how the management should be done. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to note that there was a lot of criticism of having the OMKM focused on being the managing authority. Back in the year 2000, there were hundreds of people that came out and opposed the master plan before the Board of Regents, and I believe all of that was videotaped. Many, and I included, consider them just a facade of inviting, of having the management responsibility brought to the Big Island, when in fact it is an advisory body to the UH Chancellor, who then advises the UH President in Manoa as to what happens on the mountain. And if you look closely at who has been on the OMKM board, they all have all been either astronomers or members of the Chambers of Commerce that want further development on the mountain.
So how did you get on the Office of Mauna Kea Management's Environment Committee?
Oh, I actually did not. That was Deborah Ward.
Oh, okay.
We actually, years earlier, Sierra Club had tried to...
Excuse me, Mr. Ho.
Yes.
I need you to listen to the question and answer it
Yes.
directly, so I think you have answered it.
Thank you.
I know you have a lot of history and want to expand it, but we
Okay.
need to stay focused.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pisciotta?
Okay. Just trying to understand the time frame. You were you aren't on the Environment Committee, but you were actually on President Mortimer's original
That's correct. He had
Committee.
invited me to participate.
with Larry
Kimura?
and Pila Wilson.
Correct.
At that time.
Correct.
Okay, so, and then Mililani was on that, and Mililani was on that, correct?
She attended the meetings but did not want to officially be part of it.
Right. Do you know the history of her appointing me to go there, and was I allowed to sit on that committee?
Oh, yes, that is correct. I forgot that detail, yes.
Right.
Yes.
But was I allowed to sit on that committee?
No, you weren't.
Yeah, okay, thank you. You say in, sorry. So, is it, in your history of understanding of what's gone on, has OMKM ever reviewed or convened any hearings or meetings to review any of the previous findings of the contested case hearings, the NASA EIS, or and have the, can you answer that question first?
Yes, I
Please
would.
do not answer. There's an objection.
Yes, Your Honor, I think the question lacks a foundation, and whether he actually knows, has knowledge of